Everything you think you know about the Jurassic is a Hollywood fabrication designed to sell fear. The reality was not a constant chase. It was a slow, agonizing struggle for dominance in a landscape that would kill a human in seconds. We are cutting through the noise to expose the actual architects of this golden age. Listen to the earth beneath your feet. There is a rhythm here, a low-frequency pulse generated by bone and muscle at a scale modern biology cannot replicate. It is the sound of a 19-ton sauropod shifting its weight, a seismic, deliberate vibration that silenced smaller predators cowering in the fern-choked undergrowth. We have spent decades obsessed with the idea of monsters, painting these creatures as mindless agents of chaos. Yet, the physical evidence preserved in the limestone strata of the Jura Mountains tells a different story. This was an era of adaptation, not senseless destruction. The true rulers of this silent world were the sauropods, whose colossal physical presence and insatiable herbivory dictated the flow of energy across every terrestrial ecosystem. These rulers were not the bloodthirsty monsters carved into our popular culture. Hollywood gave us venom-spitting predators and creatures with two brains. But the fossil record paints a colder, more logical picture. To reach the truth, we must strip away these fabrications. We are abandoning the screen to look at the strata, grounding our exploration in the limestone of the Jura Mountains and the sediment-rich depths of the Morrison Formation. In these layers, we find the evidence of a biome governed by biology, not movie scripts. We find the bones of the Allosaurus, not as a mindless killer, but as a specialized apex hunter. We see the sauropods, like the 27-meter Diplodocus, not as lumbering oddities, but as biological marvels of structural evolution. Distinguishing between paleontological reality and the fiction sold for decades requires us to strip back the sediment of the Mesozoic to see how these animals functioned within their own indifferent hierarchy. The evidence is waiting in the rock, and it challenges the popular assumptions about the kings of the Jurassic. The map of the world we recognize was not there. 201 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began to fail. Stresses within the planet's crust snapped the world in two, driving a tectonic wedge between Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. This was not a slow drift. It was a violent, continent-scale rupture. Beneath the crushing pressure of shifting plates, the Earth cracked open, carving out the birth canal of the central Atlantic Ocean and the future basin of the Gulf of Mexico. As the oceans poured into these new, jagged scars, the geography of life shifted. Habitats that were once contiguous, unified ecosystems were severed. Swamps and forests that supported specific lineages were pushed into isolation. Species found themselves trapped in a world that was suddenly fragmented and changing. The splintering of this landmass dictated evolution, as localized conditions forced life to adapt to isolation or vanish. As the continents tore themselves apart, the silence of the Jurassic was shattered by the grinding of tectonic plates. The world that emerged from the wreckage was a hothouse. With no ice caps to lock away the planet's moisture, the Jurassic became an engine of relentless growth. Heat and humidity pushed deep into the latitudes, allowing forests of gymnosperms, conifers, cycads, and ginkgos to thrive within sight of the poles. In this greenhouse, fern-covered plains stretched across the fragmented remnants of Pangaea, providing a calorie-rich foundation for life, claiming the vacant niches left by the previous extinction. This was a pressurized incubator. The warm, humid climate acted as a constant, providing the energy surplus required for the rapid ascent of the dinosaurs. As the heat stabilized, it created an environment that demanded life grow, evolve, and diversify at an unprecedented pace. In this engine of the Jurassic, the laws of physics faced a challenge. Life pushed toward a new vertical limit. The sauropods, creatures like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus, did not merely grow large. They redefined the architecture of the vertebrate body. With reach extending upward of 26 meters and neck structures engineered to bypass the energy costs that tether modern animals, these titans commanded the canopy. They tapped into a fuel source unreachable by smaller herbivores, processing the abundant conifers, cycads, and ferns that carpeted the landscape. Their metabolic furnace functioned by leveraging this high-calorie intake, sustaining a scale that defies the constraints of typical bone and muscle. We look at the fossils and the biomechanical data to confirm that these giants were the inevitable result of an ecosystem that demanded extreme size to maintain balance. Their gargantuan structures thrived because their growth trajectories were perfectly synced with the high productivity environment. The shadows of the late Jurassic belonged to Allosaurus. While fiction casts this 12-meter theropod as a solitary engine of destruction, the anatomy dictates a disciplined reality. Its skull shows unexpected kinetic flexibility, designed for high-impact slicing rather than the bone-crushing force of later giants. Biomechanical modeling reveals a predator that mastered the geometry of the strike, utilizing powerful, three-clawed forelimbs to secure prey before delivering precise wounds. Evidence from the Morrison Formation suggests social complexity. Multiple skeletons of varying ages found in close proximity point toward coordinated behavior. These animals possessed the bone density and muscle architecture to navigate terrain with agility, likely operating within social units that shared the energy-intensive labor of the hunt. They thrived through coordination, turning the landscape into an arena of calculated action. While these hunters dominated the daylight, a different, quieter struggle for persistence unfolded in the dark. Small crown group mammals scurried through the undergrowth, living entirely in the margins. These were not primitive, hulking ancestors. They were tiny, hyper-alert, and nocturnal, refined by the necessity of avoiding the apex predators that ruled the daylight. Their biology shifted to favor sensory traits and metabolic efficiencies that allowed them to survive in a world that had no room for them on a grand scale. This diversification was subtle, hidden in the strata, and ignored by the dominant reptiles. As the climate began its slow, inevitable grind toward the next great transition, these specialized, nocturnal survivors acted as an ecological anchor, holding the mammalian lineage steady until the giants finally succumbed. We must look away from the land to understand the scope of this era. As some lineages retreated to the shadows, others sought refuge in the newly forming marine corridors created by the rifting of Pangaea. Beneath the surface of the Tethys Ocean, an entirely different evolutionary path played out, free from the constraints of the ground. The Jurassic seas were the domain of specialized marine reptiles. Ichthyosaurs, sleek, streamlined predators, converged on a body plan strikingly similar to modern dolphins, evidence of a high-pressure environment that rewarded speed and metabolic efficiency. Nearby, the long-necked plesiosaurs patrolled the same waters. Their anatomy specialized for aquatic pursuit. This was a separate, parallel kingdom where survival depended on hydrodynamics rather than raw size or terrestrial dominance. Lift your gaze from the humid forests and you find the pterosaurs. They have often been misidentified as dinosaurs with wings, a reductionist error that ignores their unique evolutionary trajectory. They were the first vertebrates to master flight, specialized machines of hollow bone and leathery membrane. Unlike the heavy sauropods that relied on the Jurassic's heat to fuel their massive frames, pterosaurs utilized that same atmospheric warmth to exploit new niches. They were not merely aerial predators. They were precision gliders and agile hunters, adapted to traverse the massive distances created by the rifting supercontinent. Their skeletons are proof of an engineering marvel. Light, fragile, and aerodynamic, the fossil record dismantles the myth of the lumbering, scaly beast. Within the late Jurassic strata, the boundary between reptile and avian dissolves. Archaeopteryx leaves behind clear impressions of plumage, pinning it firmly to the theropod line. These are not merely primitive curiosities. They are specialized dinosaurs, shifting the definition of the group toward the avian lineage. The feathers suggest a complex metabolism, demanding high energy and internal heat. These are bones built for a fast-paced existence, hollow, lightweight, and engineered for agility. This transition marks a major departure from the sluggish, reptile-only interpretations of the past. As global forests reached toward the poles, these creatures occupied an ecological niche that demanded rapid evolution. Their existence signals a bridge in vertebrate history, proving that the Mesozoic was a time of sophisticated biological refinement. The hope of a Jurassic resurrection is written in cells. But the truth is written in decay. Popular myth suggests we could recover ancient blueprints from the blood within fossilized bone or trapped amber. Science tells a harsher story. Deoxyribonucleic acid is a fragile molecule. It breaks down through hydrolysis and oxidation, shattering its double helix into unrecognizable dust long before a skeleton turns to stone. In the heat of the Jurassic, biological structures vanished almost as quickly as they were buried. After millions of years, the code is effectively gone, wiped clean by the chemistry of deep time. We are not looking at a hidden library of genetic data waiting to be decoded. We are looking at empty stone. The dream of bringing these giants back remains firmly in the sphere of fantasy, fundamentally barred by the laws of molecular collapse. There is no DNA to sequence, no miracle of revival to perform. But if the creatures themselves are lost to the chemistry of the Earth, the environment they left behind remains. The sun climbs over the floodplain, warming a dense thicket of conifers and towering ginkgos. A herd of Diplodocus moves in rhythmic silence, their 27-meter frames stripping away high canopy foliage with mechanical precision. They harvest, driven by metabolic demands that ignore the humidity rising from the silt-heavy ground. In the shadows of the tree line, an Allosaurus tracks the vibrations of the herd, assessing the flank of a straggler with predatory patience. There is no sentiment in the brush. The herbivore consumes, the hunter strikes, and the cycle continues regardless of which individual succeeds or perishes. Yet, this landscape is restless. Beneath the surface of this lush success story, the crust itself is shifting. The continents pull apart, destabilizing the very foundation of this reign. We are witnessing the peak of a geological era, but the clock is already ticking toward a finality hidden in the strata. 56 million years of equilibrium began to fracture. The tectonic drift, once a slow crawl, accelerated as the rifts between Laurasia and Gondwana widened, tearing the foundation of the Jurassic apart. Beneath the crust, the mantle pulsed with instability. Magmatic activity surged, forcing plumes of volcanic gas into an atmosphere straining under the weight of tectonic shift. The lush, humid stability of the floodplain buckled as cooling currents disrupted the global cycle. Sea levels oscillated, retreating from the continental shelves and draining the Tethys Ocean's inland basins. As these shallow seaways vanished, the specialized marine life faced a rapidly shrinking map. Terrestrial giants, long adapted to a world of endless, predictable greenery, encountered a landscape becoming fragmented and harsh. The geological strata record the violence of this transition. The deposition of fine-grained sediment halted, replaced by the jagged rubble of a cooling, restless earth. The golden age of the sauropod ended, leaving the world poised for a different, unforgiving biological regime. 56 million years is a duration that defies intuition. To grasp the Jurassic, you must stop measuring by the heartbeat of our own civilization and start measuring by the grinding of tectonic plates. Human history, from our earliest stone tools to the present, is a mere flickering spark against this expanse. We have existed for a fraction of a percent of the time that dinosaurs spent perfecting their hold on the planet. This is the tyranny of deep time, the realization that the Jurassic was not a prologue to us, but a complete, self-sustaining world that operated for millions of generations before a single feather or scale drifted into the fossil record. Every bone we extract from the ground represents an individual existence that lived, breathed, and died long before our lineage emerged from the shadows. The Earth keeps these remnants not to be found by us, but because it is an indifferent vault. We are not the masters of this history, only the late-coming witnesses. These stone layers are the ledger of a forgotten sovereignty, reminding us that every epoch, no matter how dominant, eventually yields to the relentless shift of the planet. The Jurassic has not vanished. It is locked into the limestone and the fossil-rich sediment of the Earth. Every exposed ridge is a page of a 56 million year record, preserved by the indifferent pressure of deep time. We pull the vertebrae of an Allosaurus and the remnants of polar ferns from the ground. These are not ghosts, but chemical realities. They remain our only tangible bridge back to an era of surging oceans, global forests, and the tectonic architecture of a rifting world. We are the fleeting witnesses to this sequence. Our species occupies a single heartbeat in the geological span, yet we hold the tools to decipher the code left in the strata. By grounding our view in the fossil record, we move past cinematic myth and confront the brutal, cyclical history of our planet. The stone layers hold no sentiment. They provide a precise account of how life diversified, dominated, and yielded to the next great transition. Look to the Earth. The story of our world is written in the silence of the stones.